printing money is exactly like peeing in the pool. And I was like, yeah, that is exactly right. Except, the Fed pissed in the pool to the tune of 50% of the total liquidity supply.
The typical person, they might even know by now that they're losing in real terms, but as long as they're not losing in nominal terms, they're comfortable with that.
U.S. government bonds, the shitcoin that's issued ad infinitum, that the Fed buys with USD, which is another shitcoin issued ad infinitum. So it's literally just this imaginary circle jerk.
Aside from Bitcoin, I'm making my bets 100% on a return to reality. The dead internet prophecy is going to come to light.
And so the way Christ answered that question, and he said, render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's. I hear him implicitly saying, don't give that anything.
So Brian, I got a question for you. Can you explain how your faith in God or your religious beliefs intersect with your belief in Bitcoin?
Let's just start with the, what'd you call it? Capital flow inertia?
Yes, sir.
Maybe you could just frame up that theory for us, the terminology and whatnot. I think I understood most of what you said, but I didn't pick up on the inertia component.
Yeah. So it just for reference, it would be, the inertia would be the US dollar pool is kind of inert because it's so big. It's represented as less volatile, even though we understand that it's volatile. So that would be the inert object. And what impact does capital flow? At what point is it impacted? Is the dollar impacted? If $10 trillion came out of US dollars, that might impact it. But 100 billion, 150 billion, how much can come out of the US dollar without impacting it, without dollar milkshaking it in reverse, or and going into Bitcoin? Well, $10 billion coming out of USD going into Bitcoin has an outsized impact. It has almost no impact on US dollars. It's going to stay inert. The Bitcoin will be impacted by it. What is the outsized impact on Bitcoin? And at what point? Because if we have politicians on our side right now putting tailwinds behind Bitcoin, at what point of the US dollar being destroyed does that start to raise alarm bells of we can no longer put support towards Bitcoin? Or is that the plan? I mean, that's the flip side of it. Is it intentionally being destroyed for whatever reasons you would have, of debt relief and payoff and those types of things? So yeah, the US dollar would be the inert object. And yeah, I think we could explore that a little.
All right. So let's just go with the number 100 billion. We'll say the US dollars, market cap, which is not exactly the right term, but its total value is around 100. Sure. What is it around? What is global USM2? It is, I'm wanting to say 100. I think we go with global M2, which would be not just USD.
M2 per chat is 94.87 trillion.
Oh, that's not just USD.
That was all. Yeah.
So let's go global M2 is 100 trillion, basically. Okay. So global fiat, what they call that, narrow money, I think. Or is that broad money? M1's narrow, M2's broad. So if you got $100 trillion and 100 billion comes out of it, right? So you're creating more selling pressure on M2 to buy BTC. That's basically 10 basis points. So if it's $100 trillion and you've got 100 billion coming out of it, that's 1/1000th, which is 1/10 of a percentage, which is 10 basis points. So that doesn't put very much downward pressure on US dollar value at all, right? It's the daily trading volume of, well, not USD, sorry, global M2 is a massive number. I think the daily trading volume is like $5 trillion daily. So $100 billion is, nothing. But if $100 billion flows into BTC, which is a $2 trillion asset, that's more like that's 5% of its market cap basically flowing in that day. And so if its total trading volume day to day is in the probably $10 to $15 billion range, then you're going to eat up, 8 days of trading volume basically in one buy, which could put a lot of upward pressure on the price really quickly. That's where you get that multiplier effect that you talked about. Right. So that all makes sense, where like you could have almost no perceptible change coming out of global M2, but a massive uptick in BTC. But the inertial component, like when I think of the word inertia, it's something that an object that's in motion that is going to continue to be in motion. So I guess I'm still trying to place what is there an inertial component in that sense in this theory, or am I missing something?
Right. So you have an inert object in USD, or I guess in this case global M2 the giant capital pool, and then that object in motion, the capital flowing in to BTC. It's essentially the inertia it's taking BTC and riding it. I mean, it's more of a visual component, right? So what is the inertial impact? Well, it's carrying, BTC's at 117, like Eric's saying. The inertia's, we got to 420 overnight because of this outsized impact of little downside on global M2, but incredible inertial impact on Bitcoin.
Yeah, and that could get amplified further when you get short liquidations and all these other things.
Absolutely.
So, and then you get people chasing the price, right? Especially when you're in a bull market. And so,
yep. But that $100 billion though, it doesn't get evaporated, right? So it's gonna be purchasing Bitcoin from the natural sellers, which are the miners. It's gonna be purchasing Bitcoin from people who are willing to sell it. It's going to be purchasing Bitcoin from the exchanges. But as those dollars move into Bitcoin, they're still circling in the economy. Mm-hmm. So the dollars don't get eviscerated. And in some sense, it's almost like the Bitcoin's the escape valve for that debasement, or for where those dollars go. The price goes up on Bitcoin, but the dollars don't disappear. They're still circling through the economy, right?
Well, so I think the useful way that I've started to think about this is like we always look at it like it's one tank going into another tank. There's the US dollar, global M2 tank full of purchasing power. 100 billion left that tank, went through a pipe and flowed into the BTC tank. I don't think that's actually quite right. It's more about the rate at which these things are being sold. Mm-hmm. So if the selling rate of dollars is more rapid than the selling of, global M2 is more rapid than the selling rate of BTC, then you get BTC go up in terms of global M2, basically. Mm-hmm. So it's reservation demand, which means the demand to hold the thing and not sell it, which in the case of fiat currency is spend it, or BTC is don't spend it, hold. That's actually what puts upward pressure on the price. But it's all relative rate of change function. It's not tank to tank, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and in the tank to tank analogy, it's almost like Bitcoin is in an additional tank or additional place where the dollars would be parked anyways, because eventually they're going to circle through the economy, and some rational market actor who's producing a surplus is going to have to park that liquidity somewhere: equities, treasuries, collectibles, gold, or Bitcoin, right? So it has to go somewhere.
Well, it's always somewhere. The thing about money is that it's always held by someone, right? Even the circulation metaphor is a little bit strained because that implies that it's somehow like between hands, but money's always in the possession of one person or another, or one entity or another, one market actor or another.
Well, go ahead. So I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say it's that rate of change thing once again. Because again, even when dollars go into equities, et cetera, it's like, well, yeah, sure, they went into equities for that individual that bought equities, but they also went to a counterparty that still holds the dollars.
Yeah, someone sold the equities, exactly. And then they went and paid their mortgage at their Long Island house, and they paid for their Ferrari payments or whatever. So
it's again the rate. So like presumably, so S&P 500, right, over the past 20 years is way up in dollar terms. That would mean that S&P shares on average are trading hands less rapidly than dollars are trading hands over the past 20 years, in addition to the supply expansion. So it's this rate, it's relative rate of change. I think that's kind of the important way to understand how these actual pricing dynamics work, rather than just this thing flowed into this thing. Because when you just look at it that way, you're not looking at the other side of the transaction. And to your point, the dollars don't vanish. They go into the hands of someone else, right? Whoever sold you the equities or sold you the bonds or whatever the thing was.
Right. Well,
so it's more about how quickly those things are being sold over time that determines the relative exchange ratio, which we often call the price.
Yeah. I think not going from pool to pool is actually makes a lot of sense. I think there's an aspect, because I do use the pool analogy when trying to explain it to somebody kind of at the surface level. So maybe that'll be kind of like an introductory.
Yes.
Like that's like the level one understanding, and that would be cool. I think it'd be fun to break down. So the example I use, and then to your point of how these pools kind of flow back into each other. I say, imagine you took 1 million gallons of water out of the ocean. it would have no perceptible impact. But if you put 1 million gallons of water into your pool in your backyard, the entire neighborhood would get flooded. That's inertial impact on water. But you've overflowed the pool so much that the water starts to run back into the ocean, right? And so that's, I think, the circular idea that you could even say, I'm trying to dig a pool, and so you can't how fast you dig the pool can't keep up with that rate of water coming in. And so you don't have the equipment to do it. One of the other impacts, though, too, which will be interesting, I love to hear your guys' thoughts because I think you guys understand this better than I do, is what is going to be the impact when banks are now holding Bitcoin. So to Eric's point, those dollars don't go anywhere. So you're holding your Bitcoin at the bank, but then it's also denoted in dollars. So it literally, like, even on paper, doesn't even look like the dollars went anywhere, because the bank's telling you that you have $100,000 Bitcoin balance. So you have $100,000 worth of Bitcoin, 0.0 whatever Bitcoin, and then you have it's denoted in dollars. It's like all kind of synergistically. It's like the pool and the ocean have already formed back into one. What does that impact? Does that make that impact lessened because of the way banks are integrating with Bitcoin now, or does it make the impact more noticeable? I don't know. I mean, these are things, because this is kind of a newer frontier. I'd be interested to see what you guys think about all that. So,
I mean, to the extent they're running a fractional reserve, which they will be, right? They're going to have more paper Bitcoin than they actually have an underlying Bitcoin for some period of time, until market actors start to call them on that bluff. Then it will suppress upward pressure on Bitcoin's price. This is the same concern we have with ETFs, right? That ETFs, okay, do they really have all that Bitcoin, or is it just paper Bitcoin?
Right.
So it's like, to the extent you have centralized custody, you have more of this paper Bitcoin risk, which can be used to, naked short and do all these other weird things. So we had, what was the example recently of, was it Chiquita banana stock or something, that when you added up all the brokerages, there were like 30 million shares outstanding of Chiquita banana stock. I might be messing up the company. You add up all the brokerage statements in the world, and they say, oh, there's 30 million shares outstanding. And then you go look at Chiquita Banana. It's like they've only ever issued 20 million shares. Wow. Like, oh, because it's all fractional reserve bullshit, right? It's paper shares, basically. So I have that concern around Bitcoin, and this is why self-custody is so important. This is why proof of reserves is so important. And how long will this phase persist, and how much will paper Bitcoin markets be leveraged to suppress its price? I mean, that's an unknown, but it's been used very effectively on gold for a long time. The gold paper markets are something like 200x larger than physical delivery. And, you could go into that rabbit hole of gold price suppression. There's a website, gata.org. It's the Gold Antitrust Task Force or something.org, but they've done a bunch of research on this over the decades. The London Gold Pool, all these other largely state-sponsored schemes to suppress the price of gold, which is to uphold the integrity of fiat currency, because if everyone sees the price of gold going through the moon, then they say, oh shit, this fiat currency is truly garbage. But if the price is suppressed and managed, then you can sort of blind people to the inflation more easily. The barometer effect of gold gets dampened or is made less visible. And so that risk is also, Bitcoin is also subject to that risk. The difference is Bitcoin is more auditable, more easy to settle, et cetera, et cetera. So it's an unknown, right? Like, well, how much will we have 200x paper Bitcoin to Bitcoin markets? I hope not, but
probably not, because it's so easy to take self-custody.
Presumably.
And something that comes to mind, Brian, when I think about part of what you're touching on, I think about like the great demonetization. We got $900 trillion worth of assets, estimated worth of assets in the world. 450 trillion of that. I think you brought up the other day that you don't think this is accurate, but let's just play with the numbers. So let's say 450 trillion of the 900 trillion is store of value, people trying to project their economic energy into the future. As people are selling that down, which is what I think of as the great demonetization. People are selling down their real estate daily. Another individual wakes up and realizes like, hey, I don't need 17 apartment buildings. Maybe I should have some Bitcoin. As they sell down these assets and move that value into Bitcoin, there's an issue in the system, generally speaking, in that the assets that are being sold down to purchase Bitcoin collateralize the global debt. So as that happens, more currency debasement is required to keep the nominal value of the assets that collateralize the debt at a higher number than whatever the debt number is. So as that ocean, or that value that's in the ocean that you were describing, moves into the pool, more water has to get poured into the ocean just to keep things solvent. And then with banking, well, and if I think about the way that the system is constructed, generally speaking, the money or the currency is being minted into existence as debt against assets. But the assets that collateralize the debt, we're making more of them. They're being debased. We're building more houses. There's more tech stocks. There's more equities coming out all the time. The government's printing more treasury bills or creating more treasury bills. So that basket of assets is being diluted, or it's increasing. So the value is actually going down. So that's why they have to inject liquidity to prop the asset prices up. As that happens, and that value is moving into Bitcoin, it creates a feedback loop, a requirement for more of that to happen. However, if you can take out a B-lock, you can borrow against your Bitcoin, which I think there's an enormous incentive for the system, generally speaking, to do so, because Bitcoin is supreme collateral. It's like perfect collateral. And as Bitcoin enters into that basket of assets that collateralizes the debt globally, unless that global basket of assets gets rebalanced and the Bitcoin gets sold down and they buy more mortgage-backed securities and more treasuries, it should become a larger percentage of what is collateralizing the debt. Now, in that basket, it's the only thing that would be, quote unquote, thermodynamically sound, or that's not bleeding value through debasement. It should become a larger and larger percentage of what collateralizes the debt. I don't know if that is the best way to explain what I'm seeing, but I almost feel like we detached from a one-to-one standard, however long ago that was. Put gold into a custodian, they issue a certificate. The fractional reserve banking element to all of this, eventually we detached in 1971. I actually have a visualization where I see us reattaching to a Bitcoin standard. Does that make sense?
Man, that does make sense. So it would essentially be a collateralizing standard that doesn't require outside injection. Because what you're saying is basically collateral needs to go up in value, right? And so Bitcoin does that naturally because it's scarce or it's finite. But if you were collateralizing with fiat assets or with fiat itself, the only way for that to increase, you have to increase it nominally. Is that kind of your point?
Yes, it is. And so I actually think that Bitcoin entering into this Keynesian economic paradigm that we have could theoretically, under that like thought process, reduce the debasement required to keep the overall global economic system solvent.
Wow.
So I see the merging of the two things. And so it's kind of like, I don't know, kind of a mix of some of those points that we came across there.
That's great.
If you're anything like me, you understand that Bitcoin is something we can use every day to connect, to collaborate, and to build stronger, freer communities. As true Bitcoiners, you all know we are each responsible for onboarding more Bitcoiners. That's why I chose to partner with Cowbolt, an expense splitting app that settles in Bitcoin. It can be as simple as splitting a dinner bill. Your friend covers dinner and you reimburse them, but you send it back to him in Bitcoin. Now your friend has their first sats. And as I always say, where your money goes, the mind follows. By using Cowbolt to get Bitcoin into the hands of your friends and family, you can help us orange pill the world. Cowbolt is built to let you split costs, share expenses, and settle instantly, while always keeping full control of your keys. Cowbolt is simple, social, non-custodial, exactly how Bitcoin was meant to be used. If you're serious about Bitcoin, it's time to act like it. Download Cowbolt today on iOS or Android. To learn more, go to cowbolt.com. Again, that's Cowbolt, COWBOLT.com. Forget multivitamins and other supplements. Animal organs are the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. You can get 100 times more nutrients from organs than you can from muscle meats. But the problem with eating organs is that they are difficult to find in stores, they are difficult to prepare, and even when they are prepared well, they often don't taste great. Thankfully, Heart and Soil Supplements has made consuming organ meats so much easier by providing powderized organs in capsule form. Organ meats include everything your body needs to thrive: vitamins, minerals, peptides, proteins, and growth factors. This is why organ meats were the most prized foods for our ancestors. Fortunately for us, Heart and Soil makes these treasured foods easily accessible. So go to heartandsoil.co today and use discount code BREEDLOVE to get started on your journey to optimal health and vitality. Again, that's heartandsoil.co, discount code BREEDLOVE. I guess I have a few different thoughts about that. One is that just productivity increases in general from AI or even Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is going to generate a lot of productivity increase because it makes theft more expensive. And when theft is more expensive and difficult, then people are sort of forced to be productive rather than to be thieves. So that naturally puts upward pressure on productivity, which can increase the runway of fiat currency over time. So just by virtue of Bitcoin's existence, whether or not it is collateralizing debt, it can still extend the runway of fiat currency just by increasing productivity, which is another way of saying bringing prices down, putting downward pressure on prices, which is another way of saying creating more economic surplus to be harvested through fiat currency inflation without people feeling it. So that's one aspect of it.
Interesting. That makes sense.
I also think there's a strange, this one I'm less clear on, but ultimately it's US. If we just focus on the US, it's U.S. government bonds, a shitcoin that's issued ad infinitum that the Fed buys with USD, which is another shitcoin issued ad infinitum. So it's literally just this imaginary circle jerk that all gets dumped on consumers, right? That people ultimately pay the price in the form of price inflation over time. But all of that, so that debt, the Fed is buying that debt, USTs, because those USTs are collateralized by the future cash flows coercively extracted from taxpayers into the future. It's like the discounted future cash flows expected to be extracted from taxpayers into the future. That's what's basically backing USTs that the Fed buys with USD. So if Bitcoin makes it more, obviously it makes inflation less viable over time, right? That people suffering under inflation will eventually figure out, I don't have to suffer this tax anymore. I can just go into BTC and escape monetary policy predating on me. And then it also, as a hyper-concealable, hyper-portable form of capital, will be more difficult to tax directly with fiscal policy. Then doesn't that actually reduce the expected discounted future cash flows coercively extracted from taxpayers by USG over time, so that it becomes less creditworthy? Institution cannot issue as many USTs, and therefore the USDs that are issued by the Fed to buy them, it'll either be a more expensive bond, which we've seen that happen already, right? With rates going down and to the zero bound and all this stuff. Like, would that just continue to happen everywhere? I don't know. It's like it starts to make, I guess it's another way of saying it makes the US Treasury a much shittier store of value, basically. Because, it's called the risk-free rate historically, because the US government can just print money to pay the interest, right? You're never going to lose. In nominal terms, you'll never lose because they own the money printer. They can always pay the coupon. They can always pay the principal. Now, in real terms, you lose, right? Especially when you're down near the zero bound and like, okay, inflation's 10%, you're paying me 2%. I've got a real loss of 8% on this U.S. Treasury shitcoin bond. But it gets worse, because now I don't even know that they're not going to have the money printer, I don't think, to back it up for as long as they want. I think you'll see it actually an explicit default at some point, I guess is what I'm getting at. The U.S. Treasuries, like long-dated U.S. Treasuries, when the dollar really starts to inflate rapidly, that I guess they'll still get paid in nominal terms, but you're going to feel it a lot more. It's not going to be like I took an 8% annualized real loss. It's like I took a 50% annualized real loss. Yeah. Something like that.
It has to hurt them. It has to hurt them in terms of a lifestyle change, because I think that the typical person, they might even know by now that they're losing in real terms, but as long as they're not losing in nominal terms, they're comfortable with that. And I think there's so many people that are fine with like eking through life. Like, okay, I'm getting more tomorrow than I had today, and I know I'm losing against these other numbers, but that's too hard to think about, or that's, you know, the average person likes to do average stuff. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And so it's you know, the exceptional people who want to think outside are above that, and that's by your very nature. You're not going to be average if you're doing that. It's just kind of what it boils down to. It's
I guess the point. I agree with you. I agree with you completely. But I guess the point would be like when it gets extreme, you can't even fake it anymore, right?
Yeah, it has to.
You know,
hurt.
if it's
will change at a point, but it has to hurt. Yeah,
it's going to have to hurt a lot. And the other thing I was thinking about, this was someone tweeted this at me the other day. I loved it actually. It said printing money is exactly like peeing in the pool. And I was like, yeah, that is exactly right. Except, you know, the Fed pissed in the pool to the tune of 50% of the total liquidity supply. So it's like dumping half a pool's worth of piss into your pool.
Yeah.
Basically, like that's what it really is.
Fire hose. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but that's good because it's debasement, right? It's like, oh, you diluted your pool water with piss, but it's like now it's, you know, 1/3 piss basically since 2020.
It's funny. Certified health nut. He
would love
comments on that
He
one.
would love that. He would love that.
That should be.
Have you seen him on
thumbnail.
Instagram, Brian? Have you seen Certified Health Nut going viral talking about how he ages urine in the sun in his backyard and puts it all over his skin?
That's freaking disgusting.
Yes.
And he's remarkably healthy looking.
You guys trying it?
We did some response content on him, and it was actually sad to say that he actually looks really healthy and seems like a cool guy. And
he does, and there's several podcast interviews where he's had viral clips come out of it. I'll admit it, I pissed in a jar. I got a jar full of aging, but it hasn't left the jar. Oh man, the things that we considered to do to stay vibrant looking.
I'm looking at him right now. This guy looks like he rubs piss on his skin. I'm just saying,
he does.
He's got that vibe.
Yeah.
Oh man. Anyways,
so I don't know. I guess on the inertial thing, I like the theory overall, right? That a lot of purchasing power can flow out of M2 and flow into Bitcoin. You won't even feel it in M2, especially if we have these other productivity enhancing things going on, AI, et cetera, et cetera. Like it's actually appreciating the purchasing power of M2. And a lot of that can flow into Bitcoin without M2 feeling any of it just by virtue of its size.
But isn't it not flowing out of M2 because it exists? I guess when does
well, when I say flowing out, we're back in that tank to tank metaphor, but what I'm actually saying is the rate of change. So like the rate of M2 selling it becomes a higher ratio of the BTC selling. That's what upward pressure on BTC price is in terms of global M2.
Oh, gotcha. So
the inertia component, I know you were saying like the M2 is inert. I don't know. I would just maybe toy with the terminology there because that's confusing me.
Yeah, sorry. It's in long form, it makes a lot more sense and it's fun to play on the words. But I would keep, for the sake of this conversation, let's keep the inertial part of the impact on Bitcoin. I think
well, there is an inertial component there. Actually, I think it sort of makes sense. It's like, okay, M2 tends to be more inert in this relative rate of selling change model. And then when it flows, quote unquote, flows into Bitcoin, it can also trigger an inertia of upward price movement because you get, it puts a lot of pressure on upward price. Plus you get short liquidations. Plus you get people chasing it, and you get, you can stir a lot more. You can register new reservation demand for Bitcoin by moving its price in that relativistic fashion. That's just much harder to do in global M2. Like for global M2 to really increase reservation demand, you need a global liquidity crisis, basically. Then everyone sells everything and wants to go into M2 because the uncertainty just got really high. And in that world too, you see Bitcoin contract in the short run, but then you see money printers get fired up and then Bitcoin goes up in the long run. So anyways, I think I like it overall. It does require a lot of unpacking, as we, I think, just demonstrated.
Sure. So we'll just make it a one topic show today. No, I'm just kidding.
And so you were, before we started recording, you said something about how you think Gresham's law is dead.
Sorry, one more thing before we do that, just like, because it sounds maybe a little abstract when I'm saying this relative rate of change thing, but like the concept of acceleration You know, acceleration is the rate of change of speed. Okay, what is speed? Speed is the rate of change. So acceleration is a rate of change of a rate of change. So you're looking at the relative acceleration, the selling acceleration between two different monies. How rapidly are people spending one versus how rapidly are people spending another, which is another way of saying how serious or no, how much are people looking to hold one versus hold the other if you're looking at it inversely. And so that when you get into later about spending Bitcoin, I think this is why people get so diehard about holding their Bitcoin. It's like, well, what actually puts upward pressure on the price? It's the holding. Now, you could argue perhaps that the spending creates more of a network effect as a medium of exchange, and then it will be adopted by more people who will then want to hold it more and blah, blah, blah. But a direct relationship is the holding that puts the upward pressure on the price. Everything else would be more of an indirect relationship on supporting Bitcoin's price growth, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not to say it's not, by the way, do whatever the fuck you want. That's the point of Bitcoin, right? It's freedom money. Spend it, you know, whatever you want to do with it, do it. And to moralize other people for what they're doing with it, you're sort of not understanding the point of money. The point of money is to sell it, to buy whatever you want, whenever you want.
Yeah.
So.
Cool.
So speaking of that, you think Gresham's law is dead? And that kind of relates to people spending their Bitcoin. And what are your thoughts on that?
Just because it's fun to say Gresham's law is dead, I just don't think it's a law. Because law in the sense that it's, you know, like the law of thermodynamics where like you can't escape it. There's just times, we have historical times where there's times where it is violated. And so I would just say it's not a law. Because that tends to be the one thing that Bitcoiners will like to push back with is on any advocating of spending Bitcoin is, well, Gresham's law, I'm going to spend my dollars so that I can hold my Bitcoin. That makes sense. I just think that, you know, I have a bit of a follow-up case for like why that's short-sighted on stacking the most Bitcoin. Actually, and so in a nutshell, I would just say that the best way to get alpha in Bitcoin, most people new to Bitcoin, they say, okay, how do I get the alpha out of crypto? Well, it's not in Bitcoin because I'm going to go find some altcoin that's going to be the alpha in this market because there's the potential it goes up to 100x or whatever. I would say that the alpha in Bitcoin is spending it because in an economy, if you're doing things right, in the fiat economy, if you're doing things right, you net more fiat by the end of the month than you spent, right? If you're providing more productivity to the market than you're extracting from it, well, you're going to have a net increase in your fiat supply. Same thing in a Bitcoin economy. I mean, if you want alpha in Bitcoin, spend Bitcoin. It provides economic connections. And, you know, the example I always use is the first time I found my barber on Orangeville app. I went and got a haircut from him for $30, paid in Bitcoin. I traveled like 40 miles in Southern California, which is a long way in Southern California with traffic to go to a Bitcoin barber. Turned out after I spent my $30, he said, you know what? Hey, I would love to sell Bitcoin books in my shop because I'm trying to market to Bitcoiners. Can I buy 5 of your books? Well, he bought $100 worth of books. So in that one economic transaction, I spent 30, got $100 worth of Bitcoin. And that process rinses and repeats. Every time I find somebody with whom I can spend Bitcoin, they either spend Bitcoin back with me or it develops some sort of network effect with the people in their network whom then buy goods or services from me. They come to my wellness studio. I've gotten business at my jiu-jitsu gym because guys sign up and pay in Bitcoin because I went and he was a plumber that I paid in Bitcoin. Right now I get monthly recurring revenue in Bitcoin because I one time got a leak fixed and I paid in Bitcoin. So I just think that the big picture of spending Bitcoin is not to erode your stack. It's that sound money can also have this other thing of this network effect. We understand Bitcoin is a network effect. And so that's one of kind of the tertiary impacts of this type of money is that there is a community aspect to Bitcoin, which might not have existed in medieval gold holding, Europe. That just, there wasn't a network effect that was paralleled to that type of money. So, I think Bitcoin will be the ultimate eradication of Gresham's law. I think we as Bitcoiners say that good money drives out bad money. Well, it's kind of strange because Gresham's law says bad money drives out good money. That's so it's, we say both of those things, but Gresham's law actually says bad money drives out good money in terms of its usage, maybe not for its store of value. But like the Reichmark in Weimar, Germany, getting replaced by the Rentenmark, those two currencies ran side by side. Clearly, like to Robert's point, at a certain point, it just needs to hurt in order for people to change over. But people use the Reichmark, but as soon as the Rentenmark was put into circulation, the government said you can use either one. You can use the hyperinflating one, or you can use the one that's kind of fixed supply for the time being. People naturally went over to the better form of money out of kind of necessity. You go back to the silver and gold era in the 1800s. There was an ebb and flow between more use of silver versus more use of gold. Now that's kind of good money versus good money, but gold's considered better money. And there was times where silver was actually preferred. There was times where gold as the better money was preferred. And then you go to the Zimbabwe, the US dollar being the better form of money there. Dollars circulate as freely as Zimbabwe dollars, especially in like 2009 when they were having their currency crises in the early 2000s. US dollars circulated as frequently as Zimbabwe dollars, and that was a good sound form of money compared to what they were dealing with at the time. So I would just say it's not a law in that sense. There's enough to dangle the carrot of saying something like Gresham's law is dead.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've never had a monetary instrument with the same ideological stance underpinning it, or that social layer, which is pretty fascinating. It's like, you're talking about these connections that you're making with people. It's like there's something magical about the social layer that underpins this whole Bitcoin revolution.
For sure. I think it's probably first important, because people throw around Gresham's law and they say what you just said, right? Bad money drives good money out of circulation. But there's actually some very important context that people always leave off. And it's that Gresham's law requires that there be a difference between face value and real value of a currency, right? So there has to be a declared nominal face value. This comes from back in the day when we did coin clipping. So, they would collect all the coins, debase them, reissue them with less metal content. But on the face of that coin, it would still say, let's say it was 1 ounce of gold to begin with, right? They would collect all these coins, debase them down to 0.9 ounces of gold, reissue them with 1 ounce of gold still on the face, even though it only has 0.9 ounces of gold in the coin, right? That difference, market actors naturally pick up on and say, well, you know what? These things spend identical according to the law, but according to economic reality, this one has 1 ounce of gold in it. This one has 0.9 ounce of gold in it. So what do people do? Being rational? Well, they hoard the one with 1 ounce of gold and they spend the one with 0.9 ounce of gold. And again, you get that relative rate of acceleration. The bad money drives the good money out of circulation, which means people hoard the money that has more precious metal content and they spend the one that has less. That's Gresham's law.
Yeah.
Right. So people always forget that. They forget that it's not, if it was just free market phenomenon, you would never have that difference between face value and actual value. Right. It's whatever the market said it would be. That's what it would be. The market would price a coin that's 1 full ounce of gold at a certain rate and 0.9 ounce of gold at another rate, et cetera, et cetera. There'd never be an identity between the gold coin that has different levels of precious metal content in it. So that's a very important piece of this. And it's one that people always leave out. And I would and then the thing you were talking about with the barber, this too is a little bit more nuanced, where people just say, oh, I never want to spend my Bitcoin. It's like, well, first of all, if you had a daily DCA set up for, I don't know, $100 a day, $1,000 a day, whatever your flavor, and you're spending $30 to get your haircut and you're spending $50 of Bitcoin to buy meat, whatever you're doing, you can still be a net buyer and spend your Bitcoin. So you can do both, right? You could still sort of sow the seeds of cultivating this medium of exchange network effect for Bitcoin and still be a net buyer. Yeah. So when people get tribal and they get on either side, it's like, you're just fucking retarded. First of all, it's like, why don't you just, if you're actually complaining about one side or the other, just be a net buyer and spend it, or not, and shut up. It's just like, it's not an either or. It's not black or white, right? That you can actually do both. So I don't know. It's surprising to me that Bitcoiners who like to think of themselves as rational and intelligent get hung up on such simple things as that sometimes.
No, it is.
Yeah, for
it is
me
funny.
personally, I don't spend Bitcoin very often just because it kind of creates an accounting nightmare. You know, that's on that's a personal thing. I don't like to just keep track of it all. I do use the Strike app where I can have my cash on one side, Bitcoin on another side. I can send you cash through the Strike app to a Lightning address. So I do that when I'm traveling. I'm a fan of trying to circulate the Bitcoin, but personally, it's the taxable event that I avoid, if possible.
Yeah, that'd be a massive game changer if they do even push this $600 and under, no cap gains on Bitcoin spending. That would be that'd be pretty crazy. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's a really interesting nuance, Robert, what you said about the face value being the important part, because I think that, yes, when we talk about USD versus Bitcoin, I mean, is that still relevant then? Because we're not talking about a debased version of the US dollar versus like a pure version of the US dollar.
Well,
so
I think there's
Gresham's law still apply to the Bitcoin US dollar binary.
I mean, somewhat in the sense that, you know, say you have some BTC and some USD, you're incentivized to spend the USD first, right? Rather than the BTC, because spending the USD has less upside potential in terms of purchasing power than the BTC. You're also incentivized to borrow more. This is what Sailor's doing, right? Is you borrow all the USD you can, borrow all the shitty money you can, and buy the good money. That's another expression of Gresham's law in a way. Like, again, I agree with you, by the way. You said it's not a law. It's not a law. It's just it's a pressure differential of incentives, right? That people are naturally going to hoard the money that has more upside potential in terms of purchasing power and spend the one that doesn't, right? So it's not a law per se, but you're basically saying people follow incentives. Another way of saying people follow incentives, not laws, right? That's what Gresham's law, quote unquote law, is basically saying. It's like, you can call the face value of this coin or note whatever you want, but market actors are going to do what's in their best interest, not what the law tells them to do.
Yeah.
So what do is you end up with this dynamic where all of the shitty money circulates, right? And the shittier money circulates faster. So if it's a 1 ounce gold coin and it's been debased down to 0.1 ounce, that 0.1 ounce coin is going to circulate faster than a 0.9 ounce coin and everything in between. So it is a reality of incentives, but it's not a thermodynamic law. So does it still apply to the dollar world? It's like, well, yes, there's still an incentive to spend the softer money and hoard the harder money. Yes.
Yeah.
Which is why people are hoarding houses and equities and Bitcoin. Anything that basically has an annual average appreciation rate higher than the rate of the debasement of the currency.
Yeah, which is another way of saying a slower production rate, right? And expected steady demand, basically. People are always going to want houses. They're always going to want dollars. Well, they're producing dollars 50% year over year. They're producing houses 5% year over year. Houses make a better savings account than dollars.
And that contributes to homelessness.
Yes.
Thank God for Bitcoin. Thank God for Bitcoin.
At what point does that become like a moot point, though? At the same time, though, is because at a certain amount of inflation, you don't even touch at a certain amount of debasement in that good coin versus bad coin scenario, the one coin just stops being touched at all, right? Like the society goes over to they kind of reset to that pure gold coin standard because hyperinflation sets in on the one. Right. So what is that point? Is there just a brief window of hyperinflation and it burns out and that's when nobody touches that anymore? Or what is that mechanism?
Yeah, so it's inflation transitioning into hyperinflation. And then, again, the threshold amount, I think if you look up the actual definition of hyperinflation, it's like 50% month over month, maybe.
Yeah, month over month.
Price changes.
Yeah.
So like that would be the definitional transition, but it's really just kind of a gradually then suddenly thing, right? Like this thing's debasing over time, but it's accelerating. And at some point it accelerates so fast. Yeah. What the stories in Weimar, Germany, guys would show up to the bar with their paycheck and they would buy all the beers at the beginning of the night because by the end of the night, the price of beer goes up. Yeah. Right? When you're in that world, the money is no longer functioning as an informational tool. You can't even expect prices to be steady in the course of a few hours at the bar. Well, then people are going to stop using it entirely. So I don't know, like I couldn't draw a bright line for you, but I think it's 50% price increase month over month is the standard definition of hyperinflation.
Makes sense.
Would you rather have 1 Bitcoin today or 2 Bitcoin a few years from now? Bitcoin mining is a tried and true strategy for accumulating Bitcoin. Over a 2 to 4 year time frame, successful miners have consistently accumulated more Bitcoin than they otherwise would with a traditional dollar cost average strategy. Blockware mining as a service enables you to start mining Bitcoin from your laptop. Blockware handles everything from securing the miners to sourcing low-cost power to configuring the mining pool. They do it all. Plus, with Blockware's one-of-a-kind mining marketplace, you can buy and sell live Bitcoin miners with just a few keystrokes. In this marketplace, buyers get to purchase live machines at vetted facilities, enabling them to mine with zero lead time. And sellers get the opportunity to liquidate their machines and hosting contracts at will. This means you can mine Bitcoin with zero long-term commitment and high liquidity on your mining rigs. Blockware will even cover your energy bill for 1 week per mining rig when you sign up at mining.blockwaresolutions.com/breedlove. Again, that's 1 free week of Bitcoin mining at mining.blockwaresolutions.com/breedlove. And on top of this offer, you can also use code BREEDLOVE to get $100 off your first mining rig with Blockware Solutions. Bitcoin custody is evolving. Onramp is pioneering a new model, multi-institution custody, which eliminates single points of failure and adds fault tolerance to your setup. With Onramp's multi-institution custody, your funds are auditable on-chain, cannot be rehypothecated, and can only be moved with your explicit direction. Multi-institution custody simplifies private key management, providing unparalleled peace of mind for you and your loved ones. Onramp also helps you seamlessly tap into financial services like trading, inheritance, loans, and more, all without compromising on accessibility. So schedule a consultation with the Onramp team today to learn more at onrampbitcoin.com/breedlove. Again, that's onrampbitcoin.com/breedlove.
Yeah, no, the other one I was talking about was dead internet theory. So I think it was first proposed in 2020, 2021. It's just this concept that clearly there's millions, billions of people on the internet. But the activity that we see on the internet, whether it's the things that are being generated or whether it's the comments that are being generated or the activity or the shares that are being generated, is largely bots, farms, AI now, post 2022, 2023. So that the actual user generated content, the user interactive type of side of the internet, the forums, the discussions, you could argue that your show is the content, but there's another argument that the comments to your show are the content of the internet. And so if the comments are the content of the internet, that is theorized to be largely dead. I don't necessarily fully subscribe to that. I think that there's clearly lots of people on the internet still. I think that the dead internet theory is more of a prophecy. I think the dead internet prophecy has more validity. It's conceivable that in the next 5 years, that 90+% of the content you see on the internet is produced by algorithm. It's produced by AI. It's produced by one guy putting out thousands of pieces of content at scale because of the tools that he has at his disposal. There's going to be a few places you go. This is where personal brand or company brand is going to be more important than ever. I'm gonna make sure that I check into the What Is Money show, because that's a brand that I trusted before the singularity of this dead internet prophecy came to light. There's going to be other shows that I go to because that's what I know is it has brand equity in my brain. And then I'm going to get in, I'm going to get the content I want, and then I'm going to get out. Because there's going to be so much noise and so little signal on the internet. And I understand that it's not even real people talking to me, that I'm going to want to go back out. Well, when I get offline, what am I going to be doing with my time? Well, my companies are increasingly run by AI and automations and things like that. So my time in my company is less, there's less required of me. So I have more time for free time. Well, I'm going to probably spend more of my life in the real world, interpersonal connections, live events. I mean, you look at somebody like Sam Altman, people say, what are the big predictions you have over the next few years? You know, people are expecting some big prediction about AI. Well, his prediction about AI is consistently, there's going to be a return to in real life participation. Live concerts, plays are going to become more popular than ever. Why would a play become more popular than ever? Because Marvel, like Avengers level content is going to be able to be produced by a 14-year-old in his basement, and every piece of content that's going to come out is going to be big, grand, looks like it was made with $100 million, but it was going to be made on a shoestring budget. When everything is big and grand, it's kind of like nothing is big and grand anymore. And so you go back out into the real world and you find all those connections that are out there. I mean, I think that I've built my businesses around this. I have 4 businesses, but 3 of them are particularly honed in real life experience. So I have a jiu-jitsu school called Mission Jiu-Jitsu. I have a chain of wellness studios in Southern California called Salt and Light Wellness. And then in the Bitcoin space, aside from my writing, is I'm an executive at Orange Pill app. And Orange Pill app is an app that's specifically focused on in real life connections. I'm aside from Bitcoin, I'm making my bets 100% on a return to reality. I think that the dead internet prophecy is going to come to light, and people are going to use the internet. I'm going to use the internet every day still, but it's going to be targeted and specific as opposed to how I use the internet now. Right now, I'm bored, so I open my phone and I see what the internet gives me. I think in a few years, I'm going to be so inundated with in real life experiences that I'm going to every once in a while need to remind myself, you know what? I need to go check in. What did Robert say today? What did Eric say today? What did the Simply Bitcoin guys? What is the market talk? Okay, I'm in for a show. I got my content. Now I'm back out into the real world. I think that that's where things are going. But honestly, from your guys' perspective, these guys that produce online, but you guys are also big advocates, I know, of healthy, holistic lifestyles. Where do you guys see this landing? Because I think this is very fascinating. I mean, is this something that you guys have considered before, or is this something that's kind of in your realm? What are your thoughts?
Well, I first of all strongly agree that I thought this in general just more about, well, there's a combination of things. There's sort of the content hyperinflation you described, right? Where you've got $100 million budgets getting produced, Avengers, whatever, 30 getting produced for like, a couple of grand by a kid in a basement. So you get all of this like incredible amount of digital content that's very highly produced, but isn't that just going to like inundate people over time? I don't think you're going to get people fully addicted to screens all the time. Plus there's this like health and wellness awakening going on. It's pretty small right now. Not health and wellness broadly, but like the Dr. Jack Cruz stuff where like if you're looking at your machine all the time and you're getting all this blue light, you're getting sick. And I think people are waking up to that reality that being attached to these machines all the time is probably like really not good for you. Not just in the sense you're not moving and eating well, but you're also getting poisoned by the blue light. So there's a whole thing there. And if all of that is increasing productivity and economic abundance for people, you would expect them to start doing things they want to do, right? Rather than just being attached to a machine for purposes of work, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I think there would be a return to reality, as you called it. That makes a lot of sense to me. I'm not sure about the dead internet theory. I don't know enough about that. I've heard a similar concern expressed that they call it synthetic data, I think, when actually the AI is harvesting, organic data, and then it synthesizes it to create synthetic data. And at what point the synthetic data becomes a much higher proportion of the organic data, or even overtakes the organic data entirely, then you get synthetic data on top of synthetic data, and you get this weird, like Xerox of a Xerox times, do it 30,000 times, and before you know it, you can't see what the thing was originally. That all sounds like maybe a viable risk. I don't know enough about it. I do think there are already pockets of the dead internet theory, though. Like if you go on Twitter right now and tweet about the XRP army, you will get absolutely assaulted by an army of bots and retards
Yes, you will.
And that is proof of the dead internet theory, at least in that pocket, as far as I can tell.
Yep.
There's no IQ there. There's no critical thinking. There's no argument. It's just bots echoing bots and retards echoing retards.
A Brad Garlinghouse digital army of shit streaming, dude. Yeah, I think Bitcoin may have killed the dead internet theory. I think of Michael Saylor's orange check. You know, when you're getting inundated with all this AI generated, infinitely replicable content, it's doing a few things. It's creating this demand for some sort of a authenticator. And additionally, and I experienced this myself. I mean, I get onto YouTube. I watch YouTube all the time. I'm researching, I don't know, AR-15s, breastplate carriers, teleprompters, lenses for cameras, microphones, whatever. And it's so easy to make such nice, high quality content nowadays. I find that I actually prefer to see the raw stuff shot on somebody's iPhone of some like random event that happens. And so I think the pendulum is kind of swinging the other way. And I think you did nail something, both of you, that as time goes on, people are going to be more incentivized to actually do things in the real world. Yeah, and I think of the orange check. So, you know, some sort of cross-platform verification that you're actually a real person, I think I mean, Saylor's been talking about that for a few years. I'm surprised it's not a real thing yet.
I think you see this. I mean, you could also just look to people that have become wealthy. Look, this is a generalization, so it doesn't apply to everyone, but, you know, Jack Dorsey is maybe a good example. He obviously became wealthy as a technology executive.
Now he wears the same Satoshi t-shirt every day.
Now he lives in an open air mansion in the jungle in Costa Rica, and he's outside all the time, and he's, you know, really adopting all these principles of quantum biology and trying to have good circadian rhythm and blah, blah, blah. It's like you get to a point in life where you're like, okay, I've been pursuing this money thing, and now I've, you know, again, this all presumes that people can solve that more easily. But as people solve that money problem more easily, then you come back to, okay, what really matters in life? Well, I want to feel good. I want to spend time with my loved ones. I want to have fun. A lot of that's done outside, right? A lot of that's done by eating well. A lot of that's done by physically taking care of yourself. So I think it stands to reason that as we increase economic abundance more broadly, you would expect people, and again, it's a generality. I'm not saying everyone, but largely people would lean into things that actually improve your quality of life that can't be purchased with money, right? What does Naval say? That a fit body, a calm mind, and a household full of love, the three things money can never buy. You know, hopefully Bitcoin / digital technologies that are increasing our productivity help people lean into those things more.
Yeah, that, and if people aren't in economic pain, they're less prone to just sit there and doom scroll in their house all evening.
Yeah,
I downloaded an app now. My friend, sorry to interrupt you. Just this might be useful to people actually. My friend Chris, who was on the show recently, I had dinner with him and a few guys the other night, and he's using this app called Roots. I can't remember it. It's an app for blocking you from other apps during the day.
Really?
Like, so for me, I'm always, every time I'm at a red light, every time I'm on the toilet, every time I'm in line, you know, I'm on Twitter or I'm on Instagram, basically. And I was like, I feel that amygdala hijack thing all the time. You're like addicted to it, basically. So you can program this app to block you from opening those apps during certain windows in the day. And you can create all these other incentives around it. Like you can, you know, you get 1 5-minute unblock per day, but then you got to listen to this nature sound for a little while to get it and all this stuff. And so there's already kind of these glimmers of, you know, using technology to help get us off of the technology. And I hope that Bitcoin and success of these other things helps push that forward more.
Well, a couple of things to unpack there. I'm going to look at it through a different lens. Every time I get a reply to one of my DMs to you, I'm going to know that you're either being irresponsible while texting and driving at a red light, or you're on the toilet. So thank you for that.
Or it's Eric.
Or it's me.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yes.
Or it's Eric. Hopefully it's Eric. So it's not Robert on the toilet.
I might be on the toilet.
That's true. But yeah, no, I think so. To your point, Eric, I mean, we talk a lot about, so Mateo, the founder of Orange Pill app, and myself, we talk about this like orange check concept a lot. That's kind of part of the DNA of Orange Pill app. It's like, how do you where's the future going? I think it's going in real life. How do you parlay from the internet into the real world? Well, like having an app that connects people so that they can more efficiently and effectively meet up, whether it's events or one-on-one or coffees or, you know, that sort of thing. Finding Bitcoin businesses, all those types of things. I think that is kind of like the orange check. I think that's kind of what we're trying to build, even though we're not calling it the orange check. It's like we have an app where it's currently 17,000 Bitcoiners in this app that are meeting in person, you know? And so I think that that's the ultimate validity, because Elon tried to solve this problem with the blue check mark, right? Like, oh, if you get everybody to pay for an app, that's going to make sure that there's no bots. And they did a really good job of limiting the bots on Twitter or on X. One, through, I'm sure, algorithmic types of like protocols that they implemented, but then two, just having people pay. And so, you know, okay, the blue check mark means that this person put a little more in, but I still get DMs all the time from blue check marks that are clearly, you know, probably some sort of farm, right? And so I think the ultimate check mark is, yeah, I shook Eric's hand one time. We were out in Santa Monica, like a year ago. We were hanging out, and
Yep.
And so I've met you in person. I mean, right now I can say, well, I've talked to you face to face on a Zoom call or on a podcast, and so like I can have pretty high degree of certainty that you're real. But again, in a few years, I don't know if you're just giving me over to your, you know, you're too busy for an actual call with me, and so I'm just getting like the digital version of Eric, you know? And so I don't know if I've actually talked to you personally, but I know for a fact I've shaken your hand. And so my network now knows that Eric is a real person in real life. And everybody in Eric's network now knows that Brian's a real person in real life. And so that network effect of in real life, like orange check mark, if you want to call it that, I think there is a tool for that. And that's kind of what we're trying to build. I mean, maybe we're the one that wins that race, or maybe somebody else does it. But I think it's one of the most important functions of the next 5 to 10 years that we can do, is like validating that you're a real person and validating that you're truly involved. Because I mean, think about the implications. If my only involvement with Bitcoin is just me generating a bunch of content and a bunch of comments in Bitcoin, I'm not really producing that much for the space. But if I'm actually giving my personal time to the space, whether I'm going to a meetup, I'm speaking at an event or something like that, that lends an entirely different level of investment to the space. And so people are going to want to involve themselves with other real people. We're going to be happy to give certain jobs over to our Tesla robots to go around and clean the house. And just like 100 years ago, we gave over the duties of washing the dishes and cleaning our clothes to robots that we called washers and dryers and dishwashers, right? We gave those jobs over to robots a long time ago, because those are the menial tasks of life that we don't care about. But there's plenty of tasks in life that we will not give over to robots, and that's going to be the fun things. I mean, every one of my best memories in my life didn't take place on the internet. It took place like the birth of my child, or the time I got my black belt in jiu-jitsu, or the time that I won a tournament, or whatever it happens to be. Like, it's like these in real life experiences are the things that someday, when I'm, you know, hopefully an old man, like reflecting on my life, I'm never going to say, I wish I was on the internet more. I'm going to, no matter how many in real life experiences I have, I'm always going to say, man, I should have had more in real life experiences. I should have been in reality a little bit more. Hopefully I can build a life that's in reality enough to where I don't regret that. But I think that's the old man perspective is often pretty helpful for me when I'm thinking about like my interaction with the internet and how much time I'm putting out there. I mean, there's a business side to the internet, but then there's also a quality of life side that I think that people are starting to consider. I mean, Robert made that comment of there's a health and wellness awakening in society. And I think the screen time versus not screen time is one of the biggest considerations. I think one of the coolest memes I've ever seen was it shows Neo getting unplugged from the Matrix. And it's like, well, what does getting unplugged from the Matrix look like in real life? And it's like, then the next scene is like a parent grabbing an iPad from their child, you know? And it's like, that's beautiful. Like, it's very easy to unplug ourselves from the Matrix.
I love that.
Yeah, it's interesting. As you were saying that, I'm thinking, you know, I've mentioned this with my wife a few times, like talking about places that we could go to. It's like, oh, we could take a trip here to this place in Africa or South America or whatever. And I found that over the years, there's been sometimes I've made comments like, why would we go there? I could just watch this on beautiful 4K in my living room. I could smoke a doobie and sit here and just watch this. It actually looks better on my Samsung than it would in person. But as things become more further digitized and further perfected, I guess in some ways, it does create the appreciation for that raw, not perfect, real thing. You know, because it's like,
I mean, it's
that high definition bird's eye view of like the Himalayas. It's beautiful on a TV. You get there and it's like, oh, there's trash and whatever. It's like, but actually, I think over time the pendulum is going to swing the other way, where people are going to be like, yeah, I kind of actually want to get there and smell the sewage and fucking touch the dirt. And
I agree with you. Imperfection is going to be so. In my wellness studio, we had a team meeting the other day. I said, hey guys, don't worry, you're not going to ever get replaced with robots. We might have some robots doing some cleaning in the background. I said, here's my theory on when Tesla robots are indistinguishable from humans, there's going to be that phase where you can't tell if the person checking you in at a physical business is a robot or not, right? How will you be able to tell whether it's a robot or not? The only way is if the employee kind of sucks a little bit. Like if they're kind of rude, right? Because the Tesla robot's going to be perfect. They're going to have all the answers. But if the employee's kind of lazy and they don't make your hamburger quite right, you're going to be like, thank you. Like it's a real person because they kind of suck a little bit.
That's funny.
We do like the proof of human problem seems very real. You know, just to prove, like, as you said, you can tell it's probably Eric now, but in 5 years, probably not. You know, like the deep fake and all that progression in AI image and video generation, there's going to come a time, who knows how long it will take, where you just won't know until you've met someone in the flesh and, you know, exchanged biophotons with them. You just won't know if they're a real person or not. And so how do we prove that online? Because that does seem like an important thing, right? You won't want to follow a podcast or any other influencer, creator, whatever on their platform. Maybe you would, but you would at least want to know, is this a human or is this an AI generated digital avatar? And so before people make that investment in following someone and, you know, getting to know all their content and whatnot, there's probably going to be demand for this. Like, how do you prove that you are you? And I don't know the answer to that, but probably has something to do with Bitcoin signing a message or something, you know, creating, you know, we already talked about the orange check, the blue check. There has to be some skin in the game component for that thing, for that representation to be anchored to reality in some way that is verifiable by other people.
Yep. Orange check. You know, as you say, that's something that's kind of interesting too, and is somewhat personal, but I think we all deal with this to some degree. As we move forward and things become so AI generated and polished, and it does create this yearning for, desire for more raw, authentic realness. And some say, I just think about like me and my own personal insecurities in the world. And it's like, as we move forward in time, all of my imperfections actually are going to be something that I'm going to be more and more grateful for. So it's like another one of those weird transmutations that's taking place because of Bitcoin and digitization. Human. Yeah. The other being human and saying the wrong thing and having crooked teeth. It's like that's going to become more desirable.
Instead of just like right now, what do we do for proof of human? It's like, click all the boxes that have stairs in them. Now you get just be, you know, have crooked teeth or whatever. The other thing that was coming up for me as you were saying all that is like, we had this guy on, his name is Guy Singstock was on the show a month ago or so ago. And he was making this great point that, relationship is really what makes us human. Like it's actually how we become human. It's how we become culturally integrated, and it's what really brings us online. And so the fact that there are generations now coming up just, you know, almost lacking authentic in-person relationship, not completely, of course, like we all have some in-person relationship, presumably, at least with your parents or caregivers or whoever. But when most of your social interactions are occurring through a device rather than in person, what kind of issues are we creating, right? That there has to be a cost to that people aren't actually getting socially integrated in real life, in meet space. They're doing it all online through comments and, you know, reposts or whatever. And so I guess I hope that you're right about this. Like, we need a return to the real if we want people to be people, right? Be whole, integrated people. I don't think you can do it just by, leading your whole social life through a device or online. It just doesn't seem like you're gonna be missing some key components.
Well, I mean, I think one of those big components is we lack empathy. We saw this. I mean, this was massive during COVID, right? Was that it was easy for neighbors to turn neighbors in, or people, and maybe in Great Britain, where they lack free speech on the internet, it's very easy for people to turn one another in, because their only connection to that person is they're an avatar on the internet, and they're an avatar of something I don't like, and so they stand for something. They don't represent anything else. They don't represent a positive experience I've had with that person, because I've had disagreements, plenty of disagreements with people from my church, for example. But I would never do anything malicious towards them, because I have a more holistic understanding of that person. I've seen their kids. I've seen them be nice at times. I've seen them be kind to me. So when I do have an interaction with them that's unpleasant, or we have a differing of opinions, I give a bit of grace, and I have a bit of empathy for that other person.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm not using all of my senses, I'm just using my sight and my hearing. I'm not perceiving everything about that person. I mean, we kind of talked offline, is like, we just had in my family, my wife just had our 5th child, and we did a home birth, and so our midwife's talking to me and saying, like, you need to get in there, like, as soon as the baby's when your wife's in labor and pushing, you need to be in there. She needs to smell you, and she needs to feel you, she needs to hear you. She goes, she needs your pheromones. And it's like, it's just so crazy that there's so many imperceptible things that we do for one another as humans. The scent of another person, the feeling, the emotion, the warmth, the whatever it happens to be. I mean, we often in online interactions aren't even getting to see them. We only get to see what they say, and a static picture of what they may or may not look like. So it's really easy to remove ourselves from that person. But being around that person, next to them, touching them, feeling them, hugging them, whatever, it's a complete, I mean, it's apples and oranges. You cannot compare those two types of interactions. And I think that's one of the high grounds that Bitcoiners have had. The early DNA of Bitcoin was meetups. It was in-person connections, even though it was the first ever online money, or the first ever functional online money. It was propagated through interpersonal connections, and it was the Andreas Antonopoulos doing a seminar in some random hall somewhere. It was those things that were the early days of Bitcoin, and it's strange how the world's first digital money has become this kind of catalyst for a return to reality. And so I think part of why there's such a synergy between health advocates and Bitcoin advocates is because they're essentially achieving the same goal.
Yeah, it's much harder to dehumanize someone or reduce them to a label when you've interacted with them. But to your point, if it's just a Twitter avatar with some words, like you've never even experienced the person. Right. So they basically already are dehumanized for you just on the platform. Right. They're just a label that are printing labels basically. So it's very easy. You notice this too, that I noticed it in myself, that I'm much more apt to act like a schmuck to people online, especially on Twitter, than I am in real life. Right. Just because you're looking someone in the eye, you're going to engage with them. Right. There's a whole mystery of who that person is. When you meet someone, they're not reducible to a label. But online, it's just all of the frictions have been removed, and all of the abstraction layers have been created. And so it's very easy to engage with people like hyper surface layer, whereas it's much more difficult to do in real life. And then, and then proof of punch, right? If you talk smack to someone in real life, you might get hit. So that probably keeps all of us in check a little bit.
It's got to be contributing to like autism and psychopathy.
Yeah, I don't know. It's definitely this grand, uncontrolled social experiment of technology transforming us in ways that we haven't conceived of. And there's no way to put the genie back in the bottle. But, again, I'm grateful that I grew up at a time where I think I got my first smartphone when I was 21, 23, something like that. And like, I'm glad I grew up in a time before they existed.
Yeah.
I can't imagine growing up with these things your whole life. Like it becomes part of your brain. It's fully wired into my brain and my thinking now. I, run my businesses through it, and you handle a lot of your personal everything through it. And so I don't know, that just seems like it's maybe having very severe consequences on people that we don't understand that have been using them their whole lives. So if we can, also speaks to the importance of digital detox and just putting these things down for occasion. I'm ashamed to say I've only done like a 1 week long digital detox in the past decade probably, but it feels amazing. Like it feels really good to be disconnected from your phone. You go through like withdrawals the first 2 to 3 days, and then like days 4, 5, 6, 7, you feel really good.
I have not done that.
Yeah.
Nope.
I need to do it again.
I just try to make that my Sundays. Like I don't think I've done a week, but I try to keep Sundays pretty pure. It seems to do pretty well.
Yeah. I've been doing that the last couple of weekends, trying to not be on the phone.
One of my highest health priorities is keeping my brain in top shape. To take care of my brain power, I do many things, such as striving to read, write, exercise, and meditate daily. One of the latest tools in my brain power toolkit is MindLab Pro. MindLab Pro is a nootropic supplement that is scientifically proven to enhance your brain power. When I take MindLab Pro, my mind feels like it has a better grip on the world, my thinking is more lucid, and the articulation of my speech is radically improved. MindLab Pro has been tested in rigorous, double-blind, placebo-controlled human trials and has been proven to enhance brain power for users in every age group. MindLab Pro is an advanced formulation of 11 nootropic ingredients and is backed by research from over 1,400 human trials conducted over the past 32 years. So if you're looking to enhance your brain power, MindLab Pro is an excellent solution. Go to mindlabpro.com/breedlove to start enhancing your brain power today. Again, that's mindlabpro.com/breedlove. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably get it. You get that Bitcoin changes everything. For those of us that get it, it is important that we use a smart way to buy and hold Bitcoin. My friends at Coinbits, the oldest Bitcoin-only exchange in the United States, have recently pioneered the concept of roundups, which lets you turn your spare change into Bitcoin. Simply connect your payment cards and all your purchases will be rounded up to the nearest dollar, letting you stack sats without even thinking about it. My favorite feature is Coinbits Plus. For $10 a month, you get the best spreads on Bitcoin, which lets power users save on fees and buy even more Bitcoin. All that, plus peer-to-peer payments, target orders, price alerts, and more, means you can do almost anything you want to do with Bitcoin using Coinbits. So go to coinbits.app/breedlove to sign up today. Again, that's coinbits.app, coinbits.app/breedlove.
So I'm curious though, what was your orange pill moment? Like, what was that aha moment for you? And then how did you get involved in the orange pill app? Because a lot of the things that we're talking about, social networks, one of the things I like about the orange pill app is the whole mission, the whole reason for the digital social networking tool is to meet people in real life. Yeah. And the first Bitcoiner I met actually was from the Orange Pill app. I was this hardcore Bitcoin maxi, literally living in a rental, sold my business, sold my house, rented around yelling about Bitcoin to the same 20 people, and got on the Orange Pill app and met some dude. He's kind of weird actually, but that's besides the point. But I do think it's a pretty cool social tool, especially for Bitcoiners. It's like I find that when I meet Bitcoiners, right out of the gate, you know that half or more of the most important values are aligned with the individual that you're sitting in front of or socializing with. So I think that's it's a big deal. And so, what was your aha moment, and how did you get involved in the Orange Pill app?
I think for me, and anybody who was at least getting into Bitcoin in that like 2014, 2013 era, it was Andreas Antonopoulos. It was a talk he had done maybe it might have been one of the Joe Rogan podcasts. It might have been before that. I can't remember, but the way he framed it, because I'd heard about Bitcoin, I'd heard about digital scarcity and that sort of thing. I think the first time I ever saw Bitcoin, going back a little further, I was watching college football one morning on a Saturday. Never really watched a lot of college football, but when the announcers were lined up on the sideline before the game, and it's like, okay, what's Smith gonna do? What's this guy gonna do? All the college students are in the background, and there's one college kid with a sign that said, "Hey mom, send Bitcoin," and he had a QR code on it. And I was like, what's Bitcoin? That's weird. Didn't think about it anymore that day. A couple of days later, I Googled it and I was like, you know what was that Bitcoin thing? Turns out that kid, and this must have been like 2012. I'm sure somebody can look it up. Because all the Bitcoin talk forums were like blowing it up. Can you believe it? Bitcoin made it to ESPN. Like, it wasn't like Bitcoin was featured on ESPN. It was like a sign in the background that said Bitcoin, but Bitcoiners were going gaga over this thing. And this kid had something like $26,000 worth of Bitcoin in 2012 dollars sent to him by Bitcoiners all over the world that were just so happy and scanned the QR code. So this kid, I hope this kid sat on that stack, because he's maybe a billionaire right now. But that was the first time. And that actually kind of made me think Bitcoin was stupid. I'm like, oh, it's college kids, stupid internet money, whatever. So it was maybe a year later that Andreas Antonopoulos framed it in such a way that he said that, what makes Bitcoin such a profound impact on society was that clearly everything's going from analog to digital, but money never could until Bitcoin. So like, look at, I think the example he used was the music industry. When music was analog, it was CDs, it was cassettes, it was records. That industry got completely disrupted when it went to digital, because then you got LimeWire and you got Napster, because MP3 files made it so that you could infinitely dilute the value of music, because it was very easy for the music industry to monetize music when it was analog, because you have to buy our CD in order to listen to our song. And now it can be put out on the internet infinitely for free and at scale. So it took 10 years before Apple figured out a way to kind of like capture that market and remonetize music. And it took a lot of gatekeepers in order to do that. But things going from analog to digital, if they have value, it can be very dangerous doing that. So that's why you could never have pure digital money until you solve the double spend problem. I don't even think he called it the double spend problem in that talk, but it's essentially the idea that analog money can't go completely digital or can't go natively digital until Bitcoin came and solved that problem. And so even though I'd heard about digital scarcity, I'd heard maybe the double spend problem before the Byzantine general problem, I didn't quite relate it to something like music. And that was the big aha moment. I'm like, yeah, clearly everything's going digital. And so a natively digital form of money makes a lot of sense. And that was my big orange pill moment. And then as far as the way you're asking about Orange Pill app, I mean, that I met Matteo, the founder. I was one of the first people who signed up as a member of Orange Pill app. I think it might have been the same weekend I met Robert. It was at Pacific Bitcoin, the first year they did Pacific Bitcoin. That's when Orange Pill app launched. It was the week of the FTX collapse. I mean, it was the low of the low market. And that was my first Bitcoin conference that I had gone to. And it was pretty crazy to see how high the signal was when Bitcoin crashed from whatever it was, 60 some thousand to like 17,000 in that week. And it was really impactful for me to see the effect of being around other Bitcoiners in person, because online it's really easy to get down the doom and gloom rabbit hole. If who you're following on Twitter is just a doom and gloomer, if it's somebody that's just like, well, the market's screwed, let's pack it up and we'll come back in 4 years or whatever, then it really impacts how you think. But when you get around other people, there's almost a level of accountability that comes from being around other Bitcoiners. I think that this is why the church is so effective in terms of maintaining its popularity around the world. It's like, why do people stay in church? And why have they done that for thousands of years? Is because the church has this, I mean, it has lots of features to it, but the accountability of being around other people with a shared belief, whether you're having a good day, a bad day, a good week, a bad week, whether it's an economic depression or whether it's a boom period in society, being around people that share your belief system, it's very empowering. I think that the same thing's true with Bitcoin. If you can physically be around other Bitcoiners, whether, sometimes it's fun to be around other Bitcoiners, because I went to Vegas for the Bitcoin conference, and it was when the market was going really well. And that's just fun. It's like a celebration. It's a party when the price is up. But when the price is down, it's equally as important to be around Bitcoiners, because now you're talking to each other like, well, you know what? The market goes in cycles, don't sell. Let's make sure that we, this is the best time to stack. All those different, little sayings that we do. It's one thing to see it in a tweet, but it's another thing to have another guy like pat you on the back and be like, guys, we're going to be okay. Let's just keep stacking. Let's keep the mission ahead. And so there's something extra. There's something more important about interpersonal connections. And that's where it became very clear to me. So at the same time that I had signed up as a member for Orange Pill app was the same time that I'm having this epiphany about the importance of real life connections. And here we are a few years later. We've built out this. I've been able to come on the team as an executive and help with spreading the word about Orange Pill app. We've built out I think the most useful Lightning wallet in the world. Everything in our app is designed to help facilitate in real life connections. One of the ways we do that is like we have this really cool new Lightning feature called Geo Zaps. So you can Geo Zap people by physical proximity. So if I'm at the Las Vegas convention, or if I'm in Southern California and I want to do a meetup or gather people together, we had people in Las Vegas, 30,000 Bitcoiners are there. How do you touch base with other Bitcoiners that are there? Well, you could Geo Zap people. You could send a zap with the message to people and invite them. Hey, we're having an Orange Pill app after party at such and such bar. Come on by. And we had a ton of people come through because we were able to just zap them by their location. So we have all these tools in place that if Bitcoiners want to meet other people, they can do so. And I think that Bitcoin becomes more anti-fragile incrementally with each Bitcoiner that we bring into the real life side of Bitcoin. And so I think that Bitcoin's going to flourish because of its online presence, but I think its backstop needs to be the interpersonal human connection. And that's what I'm really passionate about. And that's what we're building at Orange Pill app.
That's cool.
Yeah. When I hit Miami, I got zapped by like, I don't know, 8-10 people. Boom. New guy in the area. I mean, some people knew who I was. I got some DMs, but I got a bunch of zaps. I was going through. I'm like, well, why are people sending me sats? Better figure out how to get these things off of here.
And one of the coolest things that we've seen, it's one of those things you hope it never gets used, but I'm enthusiastic to see what the benefit's going to be of these geozaps when we have our next like big crisis in the world, when there's a hurricane or when there's a fire. We saw a little bit of it when the LA fires were happening last year. We had the geozaps were in beta testing, so we actually unlocked it for LA, and so people were able to do it and send sats to people in LA. But like, what are the implications of when there's a flood in Georgia and FEMA's not going to cut a check to these people for like some measly $700, and FEMA's not going to cut that check for 2 or 3 weeks. These people need food right now, tonight. Every Bitcoiner in the world could just geo zap everybody in Georgia or everybody in a city in Georgia and be the relief that the government claims that it's going to be. The Bitcoin social layer, I think, as you called it earlier, and I like to call it, Eric, as well. The Bitcoin social layer can be the first line of defense for those types of things with the tools that are being built in Bitcoin. So a tool that I never thought was needed, or I never envisioned it, but Mateo and our development team came up with this idea, and I think it's brilliant. So it just goes back to one of those things where Bitcoin's going to be used in ways in a few years from now that we have no idea. We can't even imagine the ways it's going to be used, because I couldn't imagine geo zapping people a couple of years ago. That wasn't even on my radar. But it's cool to see that these types of things that are being built and playing out, where Bitcoin has the infrastructure now to be a resource, unlike even government agencies can. We can be more nimble, we can be faster, and we can have penetration into areas that FEMA, the US government, most powerful government in the world, doesn't necessarily have.
That's wild. So if the Orange Pill app had this geo, what do you call it? What do you refer to it?
Geozaps. Yeah.
Geozaps. So if Geozaps existed while the trucker protest was happening in Canada, you would have been able to send sats to the truckers if they're on the Orange Pill app.
Yep. So you could.
And then how vulnerable is the Orange Pill app to being censored or shut down by governments?
So
curiosity.
As far as we don't talk about this a lot and promote it a lot, but we're the only US based non KYC wallet still left in the US. Because we did our big build out, our big Lightning wallet build out after Trump was elected. And so I think a lot of the infrastructure for other wallets was built under a Biden administration. We got to have the tailwinds of a favorable government that we didn't believe was going to be coming after us for non-KYC wallet. So we're the only most used wallet in the United States that's non-KYC. So we actually don't collect any user data. You can sign up for the app with an anonymous email address. You can pay for the membership in sats from whatever wallet you want. So even if Orange Pill app was subpoenaed as a company, the data that we have is irrelevant. And so users can be as anonymous as they want. And we actually encourage people to maintain anonymity with that. You can turn on whatever features of the app that you want or don't want. And this is a Bitcoin first tool. And so the point of Orange Pill app is to make Bitcoin more anti-fragile. And so that's woven into the DNA of the structure of the app. So how do you get the benefits of something like Geo's apps that require location services, but also maintain privacy? Well, you leave all those optionals as far as the app goes. But it's one of those things where it's very easy to turn on when you do need it. So if I'm a trucker in Canada, if I need sats, I can turn on my location services in order to receive those sats. If there was ever something where, Orange Pill app faced any kind of scrutiny, we could just send out the bat signal, turn off your location services, and you vanish like a ghost in the night.
That's interesting. And one thing I was curious, when I first signed up to the Orange Pill app, one of the things that went through my head is like, wait a second. Isn't the goal to not, I don't know, give out my location, right? And so as I was going through it, I think it's 5 miles. It'll say, so if Robert and I are on the Orange Pill app, we have our location services turned on. I think he shows up as he's within a 5 mile radius of me.
Yeah. And so sometimes it'll say 10, even if he's right next to you. Yeah, it'll say 5 or 10, even if you guys looked at each other right now in the app.
So how is the app designed to help protect people who are very careful about sharing their location as a location-based social app? What kind of things has the Orange Pill app done to mitigate any safety issues potentially?
Yeah. So, even that right there, what you're pointing out is this approximate geolocation. We don't know at our developer level. We don't know pinpoint where you are. There's if you want to get into the minutia of it, Apple, in terms of apps, can chunk things into quadrants, and that's as specific as we allow the location services to get. Is that it goes by quadrant rather than specific like DoorDash level tracking of your application. It's actually the least specific location service of any app that you have in your phone right now. It's a broad general. That's why we actually can't get more specific than 5 or 10 miles away, even though we can get it as narrow as 5 miles away. We still leave it a little bit ambiguous as whether it's 5, 10, or 15 miles. Because our thinking there is, if Eric and Robert don't know each other, but they want to meet up, whether they're 5 miles apart or 10 miles apart, that's still close enough for them to engage in a conversation. And then through their conversation, they can decide, oh, let's meet at this coffee shop, or let's meet at this bar, or let's meet at this event. You can still make that happen. So you know who's close to you, but you don't know where they are. And this is kind of the thought experiment I like to do with it. It's like, if I told you there was a cold card somewhere, or sorry, if you guys have if you guys have a hardware wallet sponsor, we can name drop them right now. No?
We do through the end of the month.
Okay.
iCoin hardware wallet.
Okay. So there's an iCoin hardware wallet somewhere in a 5 mile radius of you. You've got a month to find it. You're going to do nothing but look for it. You will not find that. It could be a 100,000 Bitcoin wallet, and you're just not going to find it in a 5 mile radius. Go outside of your house right now and look around and find something that's a 5 mile distance away, and then just imagine 5 miles in all directions around you. That's a massive space. And so if you're using any kind of, as long as you're not broadcasting your location and just posting, this is my address somewhere online, which we do all the time. I mean, there's far more tracking for any individual out there than what they're getting through this. But my point being is, like, I understand, because the app's telling you, hey, we're trying to get you to meet with other people. It's every step and precaution is taken to give the power of the specificity back to the user. You never have to tell somebody where you're at until you talk to somebody and you say, hey, let's meet up at X place. That's the only time that any specificity, and that's just because you told somebody that that's where you're going. We make trade-offs as Bitcoiners with this all the time. Every one of us has been to a conference. A lot of Bitcoiners go to conferences. There's times where we will reveal our physical location on our physical identity to other people because we've maintained a certain level of understanding of the risks that are inherent with that. And so when we go to a conference, we're putting ourselves out there. Yes, somebody could follow us home from the conference or whatever, but we take certain levels of precautions to make sure that we mitigate those risks. And so as a Bitcoiner, I say, just continue to maintain that level of care in anything you do. That's why just buying Bitcoin isn't good enough. You got to get it off exchanges and you got to get it into a hardware wallet. It's the same thing with your Bitcoin in real life connections. It's not good enough to just be out in Bitcoin and make friends with other Bitcoiners. Like, maintain a level. There's like the mid-wit way to do it, and there's the sophisticated way to do it. And it's very easy to just maintain your personal security by doing all the things that you're actually already doing in your life.
So there's a very special place called the farm at Okefenokee. It's a 1,000-acre regenerative farm community about 45 minutes northwest of Jacksonville, Florida. The farm is a completely off-grid community. It has total food, water, and energy independence. Everything on the farm is 100% organic, and it even features wild boar and bear hunting. The farm at Okefenokee is right next to the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge, where you can do camping and canoeing tours. So if you're like me and you're interested in the self-sovereign lifestyle, then you can get your own lot on the farm at Okefenokee if you tell them that I sent you. Once you get a lot, you can build one of 3 custom cabin options. So if you value freedom, self-sovereignty, and living in touch with nature, then join me and my family. We have lot number 21, and we're going to be building a cabin there starting December 2025. To learn more about the farm at Okefenokee, go to okefarm.com and make sure to tell them that I sent you. If you're a Bitcoiner, you need the Orange Pill app. It's where you can connect with other sovereign individuals locally and globally. It's great for when you travel, to meet local Bitcoiners, to go to Bitcoin meetups, and to find local merchants that accept sats. No distractions, no noise, just real Bitcoiners. So download the Orange Pill app today and find your local Bitcoin tribe. I have a question that's kind of a curveball, but I know you're pretty active in your church. You've mentioned it a few times on this episode. And there's this weird thing, the passage, render unto Caesar, which I'm sure you're familiar with, right? Where they tried to trap Christ into an unanswerable question. Basically, if he said, that Caesar is not king, then he goes to jail. And if he says Caesar's not king, then he's saying that he is not king, basically. And so I wonder if you have an interpretation of that, the whole render unto Caesar thing. Like, how does that apply in a Bitcoin world? How do you see that? Because one area where I pretty strongly disagree with mainstream Christians is this whole idea of just being submissive to the state and following authorities and doing what you're told, and the meekness and all this. Like, I don't actually think that's what Christ represents at all when I read about him. And so I'm just wondering if you have thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. And I'm trying to think, where is it? There's a book by Bitcoiner. Sorry, Alan. I'm blanking on his name. His name's Pastor Coin on X, but he wrote a book called Render to God, and he covers this topic a bit. So anybody who's interested in the topic, he does a pretty good deep dive on it. But I think that there's a couple things there. I think one, Jesus is saying the things of heaven are just more important than the things of this world. And so if you're bogged down with the minutia of dealing with political stuff, like, just understand that the kingdom of God is more important. I think that would be kind of like the high level version of that. But when, as Bitcoiners, we care about the actual monetary. What are the monetary implications of this? I think the things that Christ talks about in terms of, or things that are talked about in the New Testament in terms of being submissive, like Romans 13, submitting ourselves to the authorities, it is counterintuitive on its surface level with some of the things that were shown in other parts of the New Testament or in the Old Testament where people opposed power structures, or even other parts of the New Testament that talk about the principalities in the government being evil, right? And those types of things. So how do we parlay those two things? Well, if Christ was telling people to obey the highest authority in the land, it was like, yeah, well, don't avoid taxes, because if you get thrown in prison for tax evasion, then you can't do the work of God. So that's one of the components. But it also is like, we should, in general, obey the authority of the land, because that's how we continue to flourish and we continue to work in this thing. That's different in an American society. We don't have a Caesar. We don't have a king. And so if Scripture tells us to, submit ourselves to the highest authority in the land, well, in an American context, it's very different. I mean, that's not the governor. It's not the president. It's not Congress. It's the Constitution. The Constitution is the highest authority that we have in an American culture. And what's beautiful about that is the Constitution is not a set of, or it's not a document that tells us what to do. It tells us specifically how governments will not impact or intrude on your life. And so that's why in 2020, when here in California, when Newsom told our church to shut down, my advocacy for our church was that we need to maintain this would actually be evil for us to listen to the governor, because it's easy to say, oh, Romans 13 says submit to the governor. Well, that was in a context where the governor was the highest authority in your life. In this case, the governor is actually acting in opposition to the highest authority. So it would be evil from a biblical standpoint to listen to a governor who is disobeying the Constitution. We have the right to assemble. We literally have the right to assemble. It's granted to us in the First Amendment in the Bill of Rights. And so a governor that's saying that we cannot do that. One, we're commanded to do it in Scripture. Two, we're allowed to do it by the Constitution. So listening to a governor that opposes that is actually evil, I would say, from a scriptural standpoint. So I think this idea of rendering to God is just understanding in a general context that there's more important things to life than politics. It just is. I think that on the other side of heaven, we'll look back and say, yeah, you know what? I probably was focused too much on money. I probably was focused too much on politics, because I could have possibly spent more time sharpening my soul. I could have spent more time edifying myself and my family to be more prepared for the other side of heaven. But at the same time, God does care about the physical elements of life. He does care about the monetary elements of life. Jesus, the only time he shows righteous anger is in the temple towards the money changer. So God does have a special place in his heart towards money and towards those who are taking advantage of others. So I think that prescription is more of a, hey, if you want to do God's work, it's best not to get in trouble. But in a modern day context, I think we can leverage that to our advantage, because the highest authority in the land actually protects our right to assemble as a church. It protects our right to not be intruded upon by our government.
That's a great answer, and a good framing too of the Constitution as the highest authority in the land. And it's a little bit paradoxical in a way, because what the Constitution is actually saying is that these are the things that government can never infringe upon, right? It's not even granting the things from the government per se. It's just formally recognizing these are the rights, right? The divine natural rights that we have that government has no place to infringe upon. And that's really important, because then, being based on this Christian ethos, the United States Constitution is actually holding the individual to be the highest authority in the land, that the sovereignty of the individual is superordinate to any other authority, ultimately. And so this idea of restricting people from gathering is so crazy. And so the fact that, people would even comply with that, I think it just is maybe a testament to how far we've drifted from our founding values and our founding ethos. to now for you to resist that, I'm sure you were probably, well, I'm guessing you were probably among the minority and people that actually wanted to not comply with that. Yeah. Whereas that's literally in our DNA as Americans. That's what America is, right? It's a tax revolt against the Bank of England and all of these things. And so the fact that we've been conditioned or we've normalized compliance with, political edicts is interesting to me. Was that the case? Were you among the minority and disagreeing with that?
Yeah, initially, for sure. I think that COVID just blindsided so many people and scared so many people that there was just this snap to compliance. We as humans like when somebody's confident and in charge. That's why the best CEOs are the guys that have a clear plan, right? And so that's when Fauci comes out with the clear plan for the path forward, like everybody's going to get in line. I think our church probably woke up to the realities of that a bit faster than most other establishments. I think there was a couple month, kind of gut punch that blindsided, but our church continued to actually meet outside right from the very beginning and stuff. So they never stopped meeting, but went back inside very, very quickly. I would have never gone outside personally, but I understand the pressures. They were worried that they were going to get shut down or forcibly shut down and that sort of thing. So when you're operating at that level, as a pastor, I understand, because pastors don't spend a lot of their time considering these things, but they've certainly considered them now, and I'm grateful for that. COVID, as terrible as it was, it's one of the best blessings ever for humanity. I think it is going to go down in history as one of the best catalysts for humans en masse understanding the need for individual sovereignty. It was a lightning rod for that type of awakening. And I've structured my businesses one around like human connection, because that's one element of it. But I think this gets more to the heart of what I'm trying to do individually, like in the things that I'm trying to build, is everything I do is designed to empower individual sovereignty. So that's why we have health and wellness is one aspect of it, because when I'm healthy, I'm not reliant on the establishment. I'm not reliant on government subsidies for my health, or I'm not reliant on anybody else other than myself and my family for my health and wellness. And the things that I choose to do. Same thing with jiu-jitsu and martial arts. I think everybody should do boxing. They should do wrestling. They should do jiu-jitsu. Do something to empower yourself physically, because the ability to know that you can physically protect yourself, it rewires your brain towards individual sovereignty. That's why for I don't know however many years ago that was, they were saying that going to the gym is right wing. It's going to the gym is conservative. It's because, yes, people that were getting physically fit, it was rewiring their brain towards sovereignty. It's like, because when I'm fit, I don't need the doctors as much. I don't need protection as much. It just rewires how we think about things. And so, yes, anything we can do in life to grant others individual sovereignty. That's why I write books. That's why I do these things, because if every individual is sovereign, they're not dependent on me. What do we do in the raising of our children? We try to develop sovereign individuals so that they're no longer dependent on mom and dad. We think that we have about an 18-year window in order to do that. Okay, that's what we've agreed on in society. It takes 18 years to raise somebody from infancy to the point at which they're a sovereign individual and they can be on their own. Society's largely lost sight of that. But for you and I, for the three of us and the Bitcoin community, we see that window as this is the crash course on becoming a sovereign individual. When you get to 18, you're no longer dependent on me. You can function in this world. So yes, there's many elements to that. There's fiscal prudence and understanding. There's understanding of relationships. There's understanding of health and wellness. There's understanding of self-protection. There's all these things are packaged into that. Self-sovereignty is a very multifaceted thing. But individual sovereignty is I think the other side of this pendulum. We so often talk about conservatism versus liberalism, and those are very real things. But I think that society, more so than ebbing and flowing between liberalism and conservatism, it's collectivism versus individualism. collectivism versus self-sovereignty. And so if we can get the pendulum to swing or to stay in the direction of self-sovereignty, society is better off. America was born under that ethos, like you mentioned. And so I think that we can get back there, largely in part because of catalysts like Bitcoin, catalysts like COVID, and awakenings that we've experienced in our recent lifetime.
Well said. The sovereignty rabbit hole is a very serious thing. I mean, I find it continues opening up new things for me and for us on the show. Like, recently getting into this work on the subconscious, just learning how we have programs that we run, right? So you could be the freest, the richest, most powerful, successful person on earth with all the combat skills, black belts, martial arts training in the world. But if you are vulnerable to your own unconscious patterns, behavioral patterns, well, then you're not sovereign. Right? So it's like this idea of freedom is much more multifaceted than just political or economic freedom. There's this whole self-awareness, self-responsibility, self-development aspect to it. And it does seem, when I hear that, the render unto Caesar passage reflected upon, I often am reminded of what Nietzsche said, that everything the state has is stolen and everything it says is a lie. And so the way Christ answered that question, and he said, render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's. I hear him implicitly saying, don't give that motherfucker anything. Like, don't give him anything. He doesn't own anything. Everything he has is stolen and everything he says is a lie. And then render unto gods the things that are God's, and that is everything, right? Do everything for God. And that reminds me of Benjamin Franklin. He said, rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. So this idea of like actually walking in your own sovereignty in every way possible and imaginable is the best thing you can do for yourself and everyone. Ultimately, because you are leading by example, right? And hopefully creating a better tomorrow with less Caesars. We've made it a long way, as you said, right? We have the U.S. Constitution instead of a Caesar in the U.S., but unfortunately, there are a lot of people in the West aspiring to be Caesar, and they're acting like Caesar, and they're enforcing lockdowns on people as if they were a Caesar. So, yeah, I'm very grateful for Bitcoin and taking us on this journey of self-discovery and self-empowerment to hopefully learn the deeper meaning of these stories and put them into action in our lives.
Something that just came to mind, and I've thought about this as a cannabis producer, a certain level of compliance, like a baseline level of compliance, allows you to fuck around more. Like if you have a problem with the way the world is going and you have a problem with the economic system, the injustices, all the things, and you just completely defy, don't pay your taxes, don't stop at red lights, and do whatever the fuck you want, you stifle your ability to actually not comply with bigger issues. So there's like a certain level of baseline compliance that requires you to be a revolutionary.
Opt-in, opt-out compliance. Right. As long as you can opt in or opt out of it. Right. So if you decide, hey, you know what? Driving on the right-hand side of the road doesn't work for me. So I'm going to leave this jurisdiction and go to one where they drive on the left. Whatever it is, right? That way you maintain freedom, but you still have restraint, right? You don't want unrestrained individual action. We all come together and say, hey, you know what? If we all drive on the right-hand side of the road, traffic is going to flow a lot more seamlessly. We're all going to be able to achieve our aims a lot better. That's great as long as it's opt-in, opt-out. But if it's imposed upon you as a threat of, the point of a gun.
Well, let's take that as an example. I mean, we do have imposed restrictions upon us, capital controls, such things. In order to combat that, though, you're better off with some baseline level of compliance. Otherwise, you just get locked up in a cell. You can't do shit.
I don't know about that. I mean, I guess that's one argument, one interpretation of this is like
you pay your taxes.
Just comply so you don't go to jail, so you can keep being a positive influence on people. But I would say you're better off going somewhere where they're not going to throw you in jail for wanting to opt out of a coercive impositional structure.
Well, what about taxes? Like I pay my taxes, you pay your taxes. I would like to not pay my taxes, but then I reduce my ability to spread the good Bitcoin gospel.
Well, there's a lot of ways to play a lot of different games.
Yes, that's Ross Ulbricht.
The tax game is a rabbit hole in and unto itself. But yeah, it's not constitutional.
Yeah,
that's for sure. and there's a lot of ways to play it. There's a lot of ways to opt out of inflation. There's a lot of ways to play the taxation game. So I can't be prescriptive about it. I can't say don't do this, don't do that. It's like that would be very undermining of freedom of me to say you should do this, you should do that. But I think it's kind of like the edict with Bitcoin, where we don't say, you should all go buy Bitcoin. It's like, no, study Bitcoin. Yeah. Right? That's really good advice. I can even feel comfortable putting a should behind that, because you can't lose. How are you going to lose studying Bitcoin?
That's a good point.
You're not going to lose. You're going to be empowered by the knowledge it gives to you. Whether or not you decide to buy Bitcoin at the end of your journey, that's a whole different thing. But the studying itself will empower you in the form of knowledge. And so I think it's something like that, where you just got to learn the lay of the land and how the game is played, and then decide how you're going to play it.
I like that. So, Brian, I got a question for you. Can you explain how your faith in God or your religious beliefs intersect with your belief in Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I just think that money is one of the natural phenomenon of the world, and God works through natural phenomenon. When I get an injury, or one of my kids if one of my kids are sick, I pray for healing, right? And God always answers that prayer. But we've kind of grown up in this world thinking that when we pray for somebody to get healed, it needs to be this like cloud descends and the person recovers magically. It's like, no, God created an immune system. Like, our bodies are these incredibly designed structures that regenerate on their own. So when my child is sick and I'm praying for healing, my prayers tend to be more like, thank you, God, that you developed an innate system inside of my child's body so that it is going to heal itself. I mean, that is so miraculous and so amazing. I'm so in awe. And so my prayers are less like, God, can you do this? It's like, God, thank you for doing this. I think this is amazing.
It's an
God,
affirmation.
It's an affirmation. It's an acknowledgement, and it deepens my faith to see how God created this. I mean, like, if you go, kind of a stupid analogy, but I remember when I don't watch Marvel that much, but this is like my second Avengers analogy since we've been talking. But I remember in one of the Iron Man movies, maybe it was an Avengers movie, but Iron Man's suit starts to heal. Like, that was like the first time in one of the movies that I think he has nanobots or something like that. So when his armor comes off and then it like grows back. And I remember seeing people say that, like, oh, this is ridiculous. Iron Man suit's growing back now. Like, that's some woo-woo magic stuff. And I'm like, dude, our bodies do that. Like, granted, it's not like Wolverine status, but like, we have these suits that regenerate themselves. I cut my skin, I break a bone, it grows back together. Like, that is truly a miracle in front of us. And so, I mean, I can camp out on that one all day because I think it's so cool. But then God works in these real world ways all the time. When God ends poverty somewhere, he does it through real world mechanism. It's typically not, and God can do things in all sorts of ways, but God didn't end yours and mine and our individual poverty because he just like, boom, zapped $1 million of cash into our bank account. No, God gave us these experiences in life and these teachers in our lives and the forks in the road that directed us down a path. And so God leaves enough ambiguity in the things that he does so that we have true free will. Do we really want to believe? Because he's done these things, and if I see them as God did these things, I'm like, it empowers my faith. But if I don't want anything to do with God, he leaves enough ambiguity in the way that he does things in a natural way that I can still reject him. And so that's true love. God wants to know if I truly love him or not. And so I see the same thing with money. I mean, we have this fork in the road towards corrupted, evil money that extracts wealth, and it's a system of impoverishing one generation after another. It's impoverishing future generations, so that it's almost like a vampire sucking the life force out of the younger generation so that it can keep itself alive and healthy. And that's just such a disgusting, evil system that's clearly created by a world of evil. And if you believe in good and evil, I think it's axiomatic at that point that you have to believe in a God. Like, to me, I don't understand how we're just molecules floating through space that evolved over, billions of years. And there's not a true moral order to this world. The moral order screams of a designer. And if there's good and evil, it screams that there is a genesis of all the good in this world. And I want to go back to the source of all of that good. And evil, I think, evil is essentially the absence of that good. It's the dark. Darkness isn't a thing. It's just the absence of light. And so, yeah, I want nothing to do with that absence of goodness. I want to raise my children to be closer to that source of goodness. I want to live my life closer to that source of goodness. And I'm grateful for that source of goodness. I genuinely believe that it's Jesus Christ, the Son, and God, the Father, and the Holy Spirit, this triune entity, that is the source of all of those good things. And I know a lot of people get caught up on this, like, the Christian God is this Trinity. How is it one person and three people? And it's like, man, that's a scriptural mystery. But I think the way that I like to think of it is just like God. We use this term for God, which embodies all three of those. We use terms like that all the time. We say the ocean, but then there's the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean. And so the ocean, capital O, has these subcomponents of it that make up the ocean, and it's all interconnected. And I see God very much as that same way. God interacts with us in very different ways. The sun, the sun had this physical impact in this world. He actually came into the world and literally changed history. Like, if you're going to make a case for who is the God out of all the religions that you could choose in the world, well, I think it makes the most sense that the one that impacted history in the biggest way is probably one of the indicators you can use. And, it's like, clearly Christ impacted history more than any other figure ever. And I'll prove it right now. It's like, what year is it? It's 2025. It's because society thinks 2025 years ago, this guy was born. Like, we denominate time around when this one individual came down. There's this beautiful quote. I can't remember who said it, but it was like about the juxtaposition of time. It says, in 33 AD, Caesar is in the palace and he's ruling, and everybody knows his name. And somewhere in this podunk town of Jerusalem, there's this carpenter being crucified. But history is so rich towards the things that God does that carpenter who was crucified in virtual obscurity has now become so relevant to history that Caesar's very reign is denominated by the lifespan of this man that was crucified in obscurity. Like, God has transposed history around himself, and everything we do ties back into him. So I just thank God that he works in these natural ways. And it's sad because some people see natural ways as an out to avoid God. And I see the natural processes of good money and evil money and good behavior versus bad behavior just as a clear magnifying glass on the evidence that there is a God that genuinely cares about the way the world works.
It's excellent. And for people to get triggered by the word God, it's like, you could just stick with the word good, actually, right? God being the highest possible good, the greatest good, which is, even when demagogues are trying to commit atrocities, they're appealing to people's sense of the greater good, right? From each according to their ability, to each according to their need, for the greater good. There's like God, again, you don't even need to go supernatural with it. You can just stop there. Like, your sense of good, right? Is there a good job versus a bad job? A good tool versus a bad tool? A good day versus a bad day? That sense, and it's taken to its highest extent, is God, basically. And so there's so many different ways to say it. I find it funny that people still get so triggered and they want to argue about, there's no such thing as a sky daddy, or they bring up the flying spaghetti monster of Richard Dawkins. But it's like, I guarantee you know the difference between a good day and a bad day. So like, what are we arguing about here? The moral order is real. The moral order is inarguably real. It is how we do everything. And then obviously Christ came into the world and exemplified that in a way that no one ever has before. So yeah, and to your point, change history radically. So
speaking of Christ, what comes to mind is Eric Kaysen and how he was talking about, I think he wrote an essay, Bitcoin is messianic. Do you ever think, either one of you, about Satoshi as being like a messiah? Because I do think about in 2009, the world fundamentally changed. We dematerialized property, and it's almost like all of known history before 2009 was the BB era, the before Bitcoin time. Now we're post Bitcoin and we're in the AB era. And is it possible that in thousands of years from now, we look back at Satoshi as some sort of messianic figure, or potentially even the returning of Christ? It's kind of wild, but I definitely think about the AB and the BB world. Things fundamentally shifted in 2009.
I mean, I think the alchemy rabbit hole and the philosopher's stone is very interesting. That they basically were trying to discover the principles of Christ in a substance or in matter. And what is the great commandment? Love God above all and love thy neighbor as thyself. Bitcoin sure seems to be an incentive system that pushes us that direction. Again, God being understood as the greater good, or God being understood as the word for that which is beyond words, like to have reverence for that. And then to love your neighbor as thyself. That's obviously one of Bitcoin's major features, that it incentivizes that behavior. So I would say I have no idea, but I find it very interesting that we'd been dreaming up this thing called the philosopher's stone, the incorruptible substance, for thousands of years. And now apparently we've created it.
It's like the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's fascinating. I mean, that's a great take on it. I'm gonna have to dig a little deeper on that. I mean, I think the way that I've thought about it. Now, I actually write on. Sorry, I'm not good at pointing to things on screen. So in Bitcoin Evangelism, I actually have kind of a section on this topic. It's deep, but I mean, I think the default answer for most Christians would say, what do you believe about the book of Revelation? Well, it's that like this, terrible time happens and then the world's destroyed and then God like remakes the world. We have this very kind of like nebulous type of concept of what Revelation is going to be. And clearly like nobody knows for sure what the symbolism of Revelation means. My personal assessment of Revelation is that the earth has been going through those things. You can call me like a post-millennialist or whatever, but the earth has gone through the atrocities that, the world wars, the fires, the famines, all those types of things that the book of Revelation talks about. And I believe that the world gets renewed. I think that heaven and earth merge. And I don't think that that's the lights go out for a while and then like 1,000 years from now, the lights turn back on and all of a sudden it's heaven on earth. I think that there's a evolutionary process in which earth and heaven come together. And I believe that Bitcoin possibly plays a part in that. One of the questions that I think you guys have probably gotten a lot from maybe, Christian friends and that sort of thing, especially early on in Bitcoin, was, well, Bitcoin's probably that mark of the beast money. It's that one world currency. So that's why as a Christian, I could never use Bitcoin. And I would say that I think, and you would probably say the same thing, it's not the mark of the beast money. It's not the one world currency. It's actually the antidote to that. And in Bitcoin Evangelism, I make that case that you can make a really good case that money, that one world currency is the dollar, right? After you could call World War I and World War II is essentially one conflict, right? After the war of the apocalypse, I mean, more people died in those two wars than was the entire population of the earth for millennia, right? Like that's how many. So you could theoretically say that everybody was wiped out, because if your perspective was ancient times and you heard about a war where 50 million or 100 million people died over the course of a couple decades, you'd be like, that's an apocalyptic event. Well, what was the one world currency that came at the end of that apocalyptic event? Well, Bretton Woods and the US dollar and every fiat currency for the first time in history around the world consolidated into this one currency. Like, I think that one world currency is the US dollar. And then sure enough, 2009 comes along. Eric's point of this this BB moment, I think, is 2009 and the advent of a totally like decentralized currency that exists outside of that one world currency emerges. And it's the one way that you could essentially opt out of that one world currency. There might be a few ways, but Bitcoin, I think, history is going to show that it's the one way that you will opt out of that currency. It's the way that planet Earth is going to opt out of that former system. And what was the first country, the first sovereign nation to adopt it? It was El Salvador, which literally translates to the savior, right? Like it's the money of God. I mean, you can make that case that it's the money of God. It's the money of the savior. It's the redeeming of the world. It's one of the elements. I don't think Bitcoin's the only thing that redeems the planet, but it is the money that exists for the world as it's redeemed. So that might be pie in the sky. That might be reading too much into prophecy, but I think that there sure is a case to be made that Bitcoin is the money of the renewed earth. If I were going to write history and write about, make up a story about heaven and earth, it would sure as heck have a form of money that was incorruptible and pure and sound. So whether you call that Bitcoin or whether you call that, Jesus bucks or whatever, I mean, it's gonna have the same properties.
There's a rebrand. Well, I think that's a beautiful place to bring it to a close. I really appreciate your perspectives on that, and such an amazing time to be alive.
It's a new world.
Where can people find you on the internet, Brian?
Well, I'm on Orange Pill app. So yeah, I mean, if you're ever in Southern California, please hit me up. I'm always down for a coffee. You guys can come by the jiu-jitsu studio. You guys can come in for a cold plunge at Salt and Light. That's for if you want to become in real life friends with me, just hit me up on Orange Pill app. Obviously on X, I'm at Brian Dement. That's, a lot of my content goes out there. We're about to release a chapter of Parallel. One of the chapters from Parallel that's on propaganda. So it's how did society get propagandized to the point at which we would accept fiat currencies in the in the 1900s and the 20 in the 2000s? How do we get to that point? Well, there's a whole chapter releasing for free in the next couple months about the propaganda that was led up to that. So we have a lot of fun things going on. But guys, Orange Pill app, we're trying to gather every Bitcoiner we can to build out this social layer of Bitcoin. So if you guys have a desire to be connected to other Bitcoiners, I would implore you to join this network. There's a movement that's happening, and it's going to be led by Bitcoiners. And so I believe that our kids are going to read about the movement of Bitcoin. Maybe our specific names won't be written in the history books, but the Bitcoiners who participated will be able to attach their names to the movements of history. And I like you said, Robert, what a wonderful time to be alive. The things that we're doing right now are going to be written about from the victor side of history, because if we lose, then they're not going to write about us. But I actually believe the victors are going to write the story, and they're going to write positively about the things that we're building in Bitcoin right now.
Totally agree. Love it. And I do like the Orange Pill app. I would suggest anybody who's a Bitcoiner, wants to connect with other Bitcoiners, use the app.
Yeah, we're on there.
I was using it in Prague, El Salvador, Tennessee. I like it.
Nice.
Dude, thanks so much for doing this.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. I mean, it means the world to me. I love the show. So anytime I could chat with you, I love the opportunity.
Thanks so much. See you soon.
Appreciate you.
We lock our doors, we encrypt our hard drives, and we use strong passwords. But most people leave one thing wide open: their phone line. SIM swap attacks are one of the fastest growing methods of digital theft. In minutes, a hacker can clone your accounts, reset your passwords, and drain your life. Unfortunately, this is not science fiction. It happens every single day. Efani is the only mobile service protection designed exclusively to protect you from SIM swap attacks. Efani offers military-grade encryption on their product and offers up to $5 million of SIM swap insurance. And to date, there have been exactly 0 SIM swaps on any of Efani's over 50,000 protected accounts. So you don't need to live in fear, you just need to protect your weakest link. Go to efani.com/breedlove to secure your phone line today. Again, that's Efani, EFANI.com/breedlove. For the past 25 years, I've been reading roughly one book per week. Almost entirely difficult nonfiction books, the kind that really shift your thinking. Books on physics, money, power, psychology, spirituality, and philosophy. The real stuff. But I get it. Most people don't have time to read 50 books per year. So I hand-selected my favorite nonfiction books and distilled each one of them into a course that you can take in 50 to 100 times faster than it would take you to read the entire book. Each course gives you the key insights, mental models, and frameworks that matter. We launched with 15 book courses, and we are building toward a library of 100 by the end of year 1. So if you are a seeker of truth, wisdom, and personal growth, then my book course is for you. To sign up, go to course.breedlove.io. Again, that's course.breedlove.io. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money, and be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.